Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with the most important question on Reddit. Am I the bunghole? Let's dive in to see what the question is today. Am I the bunghole for not making my son apologize to the other kid in his Sunday school class? I will hold my comments until the end. Okay, so I, a 31-year-old female, have an autistic 9-year-old son. We're visiting my mom this weekend. She's very Christian and religiously goes to church every Sunday. I don't go, and my son had never gone to church once in his life. So today, she asked us to go with her, and she said there was a potluck after. My son said he was okay with going, so we agreed to go. We got there, and my mom introduced us all to her friends, and my son decided he was going to go to the Sunday school over staying in the service. Then, about 30 minutes into the service, someone quickly came and got me and said there was a scuffle going on with my son and another boy. When I got there, my son was standing there looking kind of scared, and there was a kid, 6-year-old male, crying with his mom. They explained to me that the other kid had a toy that he was poking my son with, and my son kept telling him to stop, and even told the teacher, who it sounds like just told the kid to cut it out. The kid wouldn't stop poking my son, and it got to the point where he grabbed the toy from him and threw it across the room, where it crashed into the wall and broke. This kid's mom was practically yelling at me and my son, and demanded he apologize to her son. I told her he had told him several times to stop, and she said that her son had ADHD and can't just stop. I told her my son was entitled to just as much of an apology as her son, and she looked appalled and horrified. She and I went back and forth until more people stepped in to resolve it. My mother also showed up and told me just tell him to apologize, and I told them all he was entitled to just as much of an apology from the kid for upsetting him and from the teacher for enabling it, as I told my son, who was crying himself at this point because he was stressed out, that we were going to leave, and I got the two of us out of there. I took him out for brunch and made it very clear I wasn't mad at him, and explained to him that it's great to stand up for yourself, but you should pick your battles wisely, and the best thing to do in that situation would have been to either switch seats or come get me. He said he understood and seemed relieved that I wasn't upset with him or going to punish him. When my mom got home, she was absolutely furious. She said I embarrassed her in front of the church, and I couldn't believe I did that as a parent. Should I have made him apologize? Am I the bunghole? Too long didn't read. My autistic son and I visited my mom's church, and a kid in the Sunday school was poking my son. Okay, we read all that. It's okay. All right, so let's unpack, and we're going to start this, but I'm going to let you know right now that if you have sensitive fifis, you probably don't want to listen to the rest of this. If you get butt hurt real easy, this is not going to be the spot for you, for a few minutes anyway, because I'm going to touch some touch points right here, and it's going to hurt some feelings. All right, let's unpack this. Now, you said the exact right thing right here. When you said I told her my son was entitled, you did not fucking lie a bit. You didn't even touch close to a lie, because your son is entitled. You have entitled your son to believe that he can just act whatever way he wants, and you will blame it on a diagnosis that's probably incorrect. Most of the people out there that are claiming this diagnosis and the one that the other kid has are both of these problems come from a lack of discipline put down by the parents. And I know I just pissed somebody off, but my kid can't. Yes, he fucking can. Your problem is you don't know how to talk to your kid. You think that your kid's going to listen to you the way that you listen to your parents, and that's not how it works. Some kids need a different way of learning, but that doesn't mean that they're one of these diagnoses. There is a broad spectrum, right? Y'all are putting everybody somewhere on this fucking spectrum. And this spectrum is just life. Sometimes you have a hard time paying attention, but let's call it ADHD. And sometimes you have a hard time associating with other people, but let's call that autism. No, let's call that you step up and teach your kid that it is not okay ever to take somebody else's shit and throw it. Now, he did the right thing by going to the teacher, and the teacher should have handled that. If that didn't work, he should have came to you. But you, sitting here in this classroom in front of everybody, validating your son's sudden burst of anger, is doing this. You are entitling your son to something that he is not entitled to. He's not. He has autonomy. The other kids should not have been touching him. That is true. And I understand the frustration and wanting to take somebody else's stuff and break it. I can understand that a 9-year-old child could have that kind of frustration. But a 31-year-old female should be able to tell the 9-year-old child that, hey, you handled this situation wrong in front of everybody in a way that does not demean them, but say, hey, look, you had a valid reason for being upset, but you handled it wrong and you need to apologize. The other kid, he definitely owed an apology too. He definitely did. What I see here is a lot of antagonism towards religion that you were looking for a reason to blow up about, and an entitled child who you blame everything that he does. You're probably single, right? I don't see any mention of a partner, so you've been single who knows how long, probably about 9 years, and that's a bad thing. Like, I'm not happy with that situation at all, but that's not me, right? I wish that you would have chose a better partner, that you all would be together, and that y'all could have a nice, stable place to raise a normal family. But you see a tendency with these single-parent households to have these kids with these miracle diagnoses that explain bad behavior. You need to teach your kid to socialize. There are some that can't, but if that was one of the kids that can't socialize, it's just impossible, you wouldn't have let him go to Sunday school. You wouldn't have let him go off unattended to somewhere that was not specifically geared towards special needs, because you would know that an actual autistic kid would be a problem for a normal classroom. And that's not to put down on autism at all, an actual autist. It's not to put down on kids who actually have ADHD and need medication to focus at all. But some people, like, if you got an ADHD kid at 6 years old, you are a shit parent. It is what it is. Like, if you're having to put your kid on methamphetamines at 6, you're doing something wrong. Or they were born with something wrong because you did something wrong before they were born. Like, that's there's no way at 6 years old you can diagnose a kid with ADHD. It's just not possible. Their brains have not formed enough yet to do that. That's first grade. You're just now starting to learn rudimentary social skills. This kid is 6 years old. Your kid was 9 years old. That's a vast difference in cognitive development. That is a vast difference in understanding the situation. Especially if this other kid is just as entitled as your kid. So they both think that they can't do anything wrong because they got this miracle diagnosis and these miracle drugs that they take to make them act kind of normal. Well, it doesn't make them act normal. You're taking the ADHD out of this kid, but now he just sits in a corner and goes, because he's stuck on methamphetamines and he's stuck on diazepine, or whatever it is y'all are giving him these days. And he gets in one of those zombie comas and he can't do anything but focus. Well, that's just as bad. Have you ever been on meth? I have been on meth, and it is not a fun experience. It really isn't. You can't sleep. You can't do anything but focus on this one project that you got right here for 3 days. And you don't eat and you don't drink. You barely go to the bathroom. You're sitting there focusing on tearing apart this radio and putting it back together. Is that what you want for your kid? Is that what you're trying to do to your kid? To throw him into this diagnosis so he can get meth for the rest of his life? Because I'm going to let you know Adderall is meth. It is the same chemical composition. It's the same shit. It does the same thing. I know that I went on a rant on this one, but y'all know that this is a touch point for me on a couple of spots. Like, I have a soft spot for actual people with actual disabilities, right? I have a family 2 doors down. They have an autistic son, and I can guarantee you that when her son was 9 years old, she was not sending him to this class. I can guarantee you that she would not do that because she knows her son. He was either going to a special needs or he was staying with her, because that's what actual autism needs. They need that constant comforting and attention and distracting from the distractions. That is something that is necessary for them, for functionality at all. If you think that your kid could go to this class, he's not really needing the diagnosis. You're going to a doctor who said, yeah, we can help with that. Well, doctors want to help, but they want to help by throwing chemicals at them. Chemicals are normally, almost always, not the answer. There are kids and there are people who absolutely need some chemical intervention. They absolutely are. But they are not nearly at the scope where we are now. What we have now, what happened here, is we have 2 kids who are now, with these diagnoses, permanent medical patients. For the rest of their life, they will have this diagnosis and they will be taking these medications. And when these medications get a little bit, they get accustomed to them because they started taking them at 6 years old. When they get accustomed to these medicines and suddenly at 12, meth's not enough, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when the medicine that you're frivolously giving to your kid all of a sudden doesn't work anymore and he's DTing because his meth doesn't work anymore? Do you think he's not going to try and find something else? Because at 12 years old, you can do that. At 13, you damn sure can. We need to get away from this excusing bad behavior by blaming it on a diagnosis. And that's why I chose this, because I never, ever want to take away from actual mental illness or actual mental deficiencies. And that's what ADHD and autism actually are. It is a deficiency in the mind to focus or to socialize. And it is not just your kid can't focus on his homework because he wants to go play football. Well, that's because he's a 6-year-old boy. 6-year-old boys like to run and be rambunctious. And when you're medicating them with amphetamines, it might make it worse. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to this. I see nothing but bungholes in this whole situation. Like everybody that was listed here as a bunghole, sadly enough, including the children, because you have entitled them to be bungholes. This is this is a touch point for me. I just said that I have a special place for special needs, and to see somebody taking advantage of the diagnosis so that they can excuse bad parenting really sets me off. It sets me off in real life. I will have this conversation to your face. I will. Especially because most of the time when I run upon these kids, they don't have a problem listening to me. They do what I tell them to do. Almost always. There are exceptions. There are kids who have actual problems that actually need the medication and don't need us just giving them the medication. But this is not that. This is you enabling your kid to be a bunghole. And hopefully you won't anymore. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me. And this one might be the one that gets me kicked off because I'm already riding on the strike. And yeah. But it had to be said. I can't not say this. And hopefully it's not, because I'm not trying to put down on anybody. I'm really not. I'm not even trying to hammer this woman because she was taught that this was an acceptable thing. We need to change the culture on this. We need to really start focusing on disciplining our kids and raising up kids instead of just letting the internet do it. And raising up kids instead of letting video games do it. Or even letting the books do it. Because that's a problem. If you're not actively engaged in your life and actively setting boundaries and actively being a part of raising a productive human being, then what are you doing? What are you doing as a parent? Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. This has been Pittstake. Peace.